Race Amity Day citation by Maryland Governor Hogan. Be it known that on behalf of the citizens of this state, in recognition of a joyful tribute to honor the observance of Race Amity Day, a celebration to promote racial harmony and global understanding, and as the people of Maryland join together in expressing our great respect, admiration, and gratitude for this ongoing commitment to community, interracial harmony, and the fostering of ever-increasing diversity worldwide, we are pleased to confer upon you this governor's citation given under my hand and the great seal of the state of Maryland this 13th day of June, 2021. Signed by Lawrence J. Hogan, Jr., Governor, Boyd K. Rutherford, Lieutenant Governor, and John C. Wobensmith, Secretary of State.
It reads as follows. Whereas the motto on the great seal of the United States is E pluribus unum, out of many one, whereas the National Center of Race Amity, NCRA, was established in January of 2010, based in Boston, Massachusetts, and has received its founding grant from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And whereas the Greenbelt Community Pledge states, and I quote, "The strength of Greenbelt is diverse people living together in a spirit of cooperation." And whereas the city of Greenbelt is comprised of multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multiracial people, and whereas the race relations in America will not substantially improve unless the public discourse on race moves beyond the blame, grievance, rejection framework to one that recognizes and celebrates our ability to overcome racial prejudice through association, amity, and collaboration. And whereas friendship, collegiality, civility, respect, and kindness are commonly shared ideals for the residents of Greenbelt, now therefore be it resolved that I, Colin A. Byrd, by the authority vested in me, by the residents and city council of Greenbelt, do hereby proclaim this second Sunday in June as Race Amity Day. And I also encourage all of our residents to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Thank you so much for allowing me to present this. It's my honor.
We are so honored, Mayor Byrd. We are so grateful.
Can I just say one little small thing that I'm at least mildly proud of? My grandfather on my father's side, he actually was a chauffeur for Mary McLeod Bethune, believe it or not.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. What a wonderful connection.
Yeah. So, she has a real special place in my heart once I learned that, which I learned that actually pretty recently. And looking forward to the video.
I'm going to crank up the video. We're going to watch the first 14 minutes of it, and then we're going to go to the Mary McLeod Bethune part.
Race amity combined with education is the key to the future of this country. We have a very diverse demographic situation in the United States, increasing the demographic. And we have to know each other. We have to learn to live with each other. We have to respect each other. We have to recognize our differences, but respect those differences. Understand that we don't all have to come from the same cultural background or the same ideological background, but we do come from the same basic background of being a human being. We're all members of one race. We are members of the human race. The strength of this country lies in its diversity. And I think it's a key to our future. And a younger generation must learn that. And race amity is at the background, is at the very base of accomplishing that result. And unless we accomplish that result, we're not going to be as great a people as we ought to be.
Many stories have been told about America's dark past, of a nation founded on the unshakable premise of racism. Stories of violence, hatred, and injustice, of dominance, enslavement, and marginalization. Stories ending in bitterness and complete segregation. Our history haunts us to this day, giving us the pervasive belief that racial conflict and inequality will forever be a part of the American landscape, and that we will forever be captive to the racism that is such a tradition in our national culture. But did you know there has always been a parallel moral counterweight to the tradition of racism? Fomented at first in small and intimate acts of resistance, this ever-present pushback has grown into movements involving hundreds of thousands of Americans who believe an integrated, multiracial society is possible. In every generation, courageous whites, blacks, Native Americans, Latinos, and Asians have joined together to counter America's racist tradition. Sharing major portions of their lives, they've risked their reputations, financial stability, and personal safety. Whether running away from bondage and enslavement in the 1600s, riding the anti-slavery circuits in the 1800s, or fighting court battles and marching together in the modern era, close association, friendship, and amity have always been at the heart of these movements. The binding glue of amity supported vision, courage, and the grit to take on what at times seemed insurmountable. Age after age, this other tradition of cross-racial friendship and collaboration has given active testimony to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s eloquent observation that the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice.
We know about the tradition of racism, and it's important that we study the tradition of racism. But at the same time, we need to understand that there's a parallel tradition. In fact, they're interrelated.
There have been people all over the country, all through history, who have been able to envision a different kind of society.
In examining this other tradition and the amity found at its center, there is a need to know more. What is it about amity that gives it a power to affect human affairs?
Is that everything that exists in the world exists because of relationships. So, for example, water, which is the basis of life, exists because of the relationship between hydrogen and oxygen. Everything in the universe owes its existence to something else. So relationships are at the foundation of all forms of life. But when you come to human relationships, you discover that human beings cannot live as humans without relationships. When you are able to achieve an authentic, meaningful relationship with another human being, it turns out that that accomplishment itself causes the human being with which you are relating to come forth and causes you to come forth as well. So we create one another by relating to one another in an authentic way, in a way that is animated by genuine or true love.
The force behind our nation's greatest social change has always been amity, people coming together to advance access, equity, and justice. The stories of the heroes and heroines of past centuries and the relationships they forged through the struggle enrich and embolden our perspective of who we truly are as a nation, giving us a new lens through which we can witness ourselves and our history. Are part of the unfolding American story and the other tradition. A tradition built on close collaboration, friendship, and mutual loving respect. Stories of the best in us as a nation.
In August of 1619, a Dutch pirate ship named the White Lion arrived at the port of Jamestown, Virginia. On board were 20 Africans, the only survivors of more than 350 destined for the New World. The others perished below board in the dank and crowded bowels of the ship as it made its fateful voyage across the Atlantic. The pirates handed over their human freight to the British governor of Virginia, and in turn received a fresh supply of food. Only a decade had passed since the British settled Jamestown, and with this exchange, they brought North America into a global economy, reliant on the enslavement of Africans. To modern minds, America was destined to become a country marked by racial segregation, animosity, and estrangement. But during those earliest days, as settlers fanned out from Jamestown, a few multiracial communities began to form through natural association and common interest. One such community was Northampton, Virginia, just across the Chesapeake Bay from Jamestown. For one generation, from the 1640s to the 1670s, whites and blacks in Northampton were arranging their personal affairs and making business decisions with optimism for their futures and the fortunes of their heirs. By the 1650s, 30% of black men in Northampton were free, and 20% owned land. They lived alongside white farmers in relative equality. Whites and blacks exchanged land and livestock, hired and fired each other, and rented rooms in each other's homes. Black farmers also routinely initiated court cases against whites when land disputes arose. Court records show no pattern of favoring whites over blacks in their rulings. This gave Northampton's residents a chance to form a multiracial middle class. Emmanuel Driggis was a black man who came to Northampton in 1645 and signed on as an indentured servant with Captain Pott. His contract stated that his daughters would become free as adults and that Pott would provide them with clothing, food, and a Christian upbringing. Driggis eventually purchased his own freedom and then leased nearly 200 acres of land from others. He negotiated the right to farm the land for 99 years, showing a belief that he could secure a profitable future for his children and grandchildren. Relationships between white and black planters went beyond business. It was assumed that anyone who owned land was a part of the community. Cross-racial marriages occurred within the middle class, and courts were willing to leave orphaned white children in the hands of black parents. In 1674, a white man named Nicholas Silverado was charged by Northampton courts for fathering a child out of wedlock. When he failed to pay the parish for care of the child, the court ordered the child be put out to nurse with Jane Harmon, Negro, the wife of William Harmon. the Harmons were given money and other resources to foster the infant. Cross-racial friendships were common within the Northampton community. Emmanuel Driggis forged a strong friendship with an Englishman named George Williams. Their bond was so strong that when Williams took ill, he assigned Driggis as the executor of his will. Williams also left Driggis 11 months of his own wages, a chest full of tobacco, and all his possessions. While Northampton's black middle class was larger than most colonial towns, anyone who's politically defenseless or lacking ties to more powerful people found themselves in servitude or slavery. This included the poorest whites, Indians, and blacks. In the face of oppression, multiracial cooperation was the key to survival. Slaves and servants often ran away together. Formulating their plans required mutual trust, secrecy, and a commitment to guard each other's safety. Incidents of black slaves running away with white servants increased across Virginia. In some cases, small-scale rebellion grew into armed revolt. As a result, Virginia's legislature enacted a series of laws to dissuade multiracial coalition building. It began with punitive measures against white servants who ran away with black slaves in 1661, and ended in 1705 with a code that legalized a racial caste system and enforced racial segregation. By 1705, blacks could no longer employ whites or travel without permission from a white plantation owner. And free black people had to leave the colony. These slave codes stemmed the flow of access and equity in the developing colony. The hopes of black men like Emmanuel Driggis, held for a profitable future in a multiracial society, were completely decimated.
Additional important friendships highlighted in this video are Tidieskung of the Lenape people in the Delaware area in the 1700s, and Charles Thompson, an Irish-born patriot leader. Frederick Douglass, an American social reformer who had escaped from slavery, and Daniel O'Connell, an Irish nationalist. Fred Ross, a community organizer, along with Cesar Chavez, and Dolores Huerta, who were labor leaders and civil rights activists. There's more to that video, but we're not going to show it. We're going to jump directly to the contents that are from a subsequent video. This is a 5-part series, and it features friendships across racial lines. Lots of friendships. And so we're going to highlight the friendship of Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt. And I hope you can get rid of the bar in the middle of the screen.
Partners in social justice for all, Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt. This friendship we see as race amity for social change. Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt were two of the most powerful women of the 20th century. Bethune was in the forefront as a civil rights leader, an educator, and a member of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Black Cabinet. She and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt shared mutual goals that led not only to a unique relationship between women of markedly different backgrounds, but to a partnership as advocates for social change in our country.
Mary McLeod Bethune, born 1875, was an American educator and civil rights leader. Born in South Carolina to parents who had been slaves and having to work in fields at age 5, she took an early interest in her own education. With the help of benefactors, Bethune attended college in my hometown, Concord, North Carolina. Plug. We're proud of that. and started a school for African American girls in Daytona Beach, Florida. The school grew and merged with an institute for African American boys and eventually became the Bethune-Cookman School. Its quality far surpassed the standards of education for African American students. As president of the college, she was one of the few women in the world who served at such a level at that time.
Bethune was also active in women's clubs, and her leadership in them allowed her to become nationally prominent. She worked for the election of Roosevelt in 1932, sharing the concerns of Black people with the Roosevelt administration while spreading Roosevelt's message to Blacks, who had been traditionally Republican voters. In 1896, the National Association of Colored Women was formed to promote the needs of Black women. Bethune served as the Florida chapter president of the NACW from 1917 to 1925 and made it a mission to register as many Black voters as possible, which prompted several visits from the Ku Klux Klan.
Never was the respect that Eleanor Roosevelt felt for Bethune more evident than when the First Lady demanded that the segregation rules at the Southern Conference on Human Welfare in 1938, being held in Birmingham, Alabama, be changed so she could sit next to her friend Bethune. Roosevelt frequently referred to Bethune as her closest friend in her age group. Bethune, in her turn, took it upon herself to disperse the message of the Democratic Party to Black voters and make the concerns of Black people known to the Roosevelts at the same time.
She had unprecedented access to the White House through her relationship with the First Lady. She used it to form a coalition of leaders from Black organizations called the Federal Council on Negro Affairs, but which came to be known as the Black Cabinet. The role of the Black Cabinet was to serve as an advisory board to the Roosevelt administration on issues facing Black people in America. It gathered talented Blacks in positions within federal agencies, creating the first collective of Black people enjoying higher positions in government than ever before.
It also served to show to voters that the Roosevelt administration cared about Black concerns. The group gathered in Bethune's office or apartment and met informally, rarely keeping minutes. Although as advisors, they had little role in creating public policy, they were respected leadership among Black voters and were able to influence political appointments and disbursement of funds to organizations that would benefit Black people. And here you see on the picture of Ebony, Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt, and above you see them as well. So now we switch to our discussion time, and it's open discussion for people to share what they felt about the film, what's going on in their communities, what they feel about Race Amity Day. We don't want to call on anyone because we really don't want to put people on the spot, but we hope that this will be an open and frank discussion and that we are all orderly and polite to one another.